The divorce proceedings between my parents had been dragging on for 8 months when I finally decided to get involved. What started as an amicable separation had devolved into a bitter custody battle over my 15-year-old sister Emma, with both sides hiring expensive attorneys and making increasingly hostile claims about each other's fitness as parents. I tried to stay neutral, but watching Emma get caught in the middle while my parents fought over assets and visitation schedules had become unbearable. She was staying with me more and more often, showing up at my apartment after particularly brutal court sessions where she'd been forced to choose between her parents in front of a judge. The final straw came when Mom's attorney filed a motion claiming Dad was an unfit parent because of his financial instability and questionable associates, a thinly veiled attack on his struggling construction business and his girlfriend Sarah. Dad's lawyer responded by questioning Mom's lifestyle choices and priorities, essentially arguing that her part-time teaching job and social life made her an inadequate guardian. Neither side seemed to care that they were destroying their daughter in the process. That's when I called my law school roommate turned business partner, Michael Chin, and asked him to meet me for coffee. "I need a favor," I said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "My parents are destroying each other in divorce court, and my sister is getting caught in the crossfire." Michael flipped through the court documents, his expression growing darker with each page. "This is ugly, Rachel. Really ugly. What do you want me to do?" "I want to petition for custody of Emma. She's old enough to choose where she lives and she's basically living with me already anyway." "Your parents won't like that." "My parents stopped considering what's best for Emma the moment they hired attack dog lawyers and started trying to destroy each other's reputations." Michael nodded slowly. "Hey, I can handle this. But you know they're going to fight it, right? They'll probably unite against you just to keep Emma away from outside influence." He was right. The moment my custody petition was filed, both my parents called within an hour, furious that I'd interfered in their divorce proceedings. "How dare you try to take Emma away from her family," Mom said when she called. "You're barely 30 years old. What do you know about raising a teenager?" "I know enough not to make her choose between her parents in open court," I replied. "This is a family matter, Rachel. You're not equipped to handle this kind of responsibility. More equipped than parents who are using their daughter as a weapon against each other." Dad's call was similarly hostile. "You have no right to insert yourself into this situation. Emma belongs with her parents, not with her sister who works 80 hours a week and has no experience with children." The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents, who'd spent months arguing that the other was unfit to raise Emma, had suddenly united in their conviction that I was even less qualified. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in family court. I arrived early with Michael, who'd prepared a comprehensive case for why Emma would be better off living with me full-time rather than being shuttled between two hostile households. Mom was already there with her attorney, dressed in her best conservative outfit and radiating righteous indignation. Dad sat across the aisle with his lawyer, looking equally determined to fight my petition. Emma sat in the gallery looking miserable. She told me privately that she wanted to live with me, but saying so in court would mean publicly rejecting both her parents. At 15, that was an impossible burden. "Your Honor," Mom's attorney began when our case was called, "my client objects in the strongest terms to this frivolous petition. Rachel Morrison has no standing to seek custody of her minor sister. She's an unmarried young woman with a demanding career and no experience raising children." Dad's lawyer nodded in agreement. "The respondent concurs, Your Honor. This petition is nothing more than an inappropriate interference in a family matter. Ms. Morrison may mean well, but she's simply not qualified to raise a teenager." Judge Martinez looked over his glasses at the assembled lawyers. "Ms. Morrison, you're representing yourself?" "No, Your Honor," Michael said, standing up. "I'm representing Ms. Morrison. Michael Chin from Chin and Associates." "And what's your client's relationship to the minor child?" "Ms. Morrison is Emma's older sister and has been providing primary care and support for the past 6 months while the parents have been engaged in these proceedings." Mom's attorney jumped in. "Your Honor, Ms. Morrison works in consulting and travels frequently for business. She's hardly in a position to provide stable care for a minor." I felt Michael tense beside me. We discussed how to handle questions about my career, but hearing it dismissed as consulting still stung. Furthermore, Dad's lawyer added, "Ms. Morrison is young and single. She lacks the maturity and life experience necessary to guide a teenager through these formative years. Judge Martinez turned to me directly. Ms. Morrison, can you respond to these concerns about your ability to provide appropriate care? I started to stand, but Michael gestured for me to remain seated. Your Honor, my client's qualifications speak for themselves. However, I think there may be some confusion about Ms. Morrison's professional status. Mom's attorney looked puzzled. What confusion? She works for a consulting firm. She's nobody special. Mom suddenly interjected, apparently unable to contain herself. Your Honor, my daughter works for some small consulting company. She means well, but she's not equipped for this responsibility. Dad nodded in complete agreement. Rachel's a good kid, but she's not parent material. She works all the time, travels constantly, and has no experience with the challenges of raising a teenager. Judge Martinez frowned at the interruption. Please direct all comments through your attorneys. That's when the courtroom doors opened and my business partner entered with our legal team. Excuse me, Your Honor, said James Morrison, no relation despite the shared surname, as he approached the bench. James Morrison from Morrison, Chin and Associates. We represent the plaintiff in this matter. Mom's mouth fell open. Dad stared like he'd seen a ghost. I thought Mr. Chin was representing Ms. Morrison, Judge Martinez said. Mr. Chin is my business partner, Your Honor. We co-founded the firm together 5 years ago. James handed a folder to the judge. Your Honor, there seems to be some confusion about my client's qualifications and financial stability. These documents should clarify the situation. Mom's purse dropped to the floor when she saw our firm's letterhead. Morrison, Chin and Associates wasn't a small consulting company. It was one of the fastest-growing legal firms in the state, specializing in corporate law and civil litigation. Ms. Morrison, Judge Martinez said, looking up from the documents, you're an attorney? Yes, Your Honor. I'm a founding partner at Morrison, Chin and Associates. I graduated from Columbia Law School and have been practicing corporate law for 7 years. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Your Honor, James continued, Ms. Morrison's firm generated over $12 million in revenue last year. She owns a 4-bedroom home in Westchester with no mortgage, has no debt, and maintains a college fund for Emma that currently contains over $200,000. Mom was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. You're a lawyer? I've been a lawyer for 7 years, Mom. I've been trying to tell you that. Dad's face had gone completely pale. But you said you worked in consulting. I said I worked with corporate clients on legal matters. You assumed that meant consulting and never bothered to ask for clarification. Mom's attorney was frantically shuffling through papers. Your Honor, we were not aware of Ms. Morrison's professional status. We may need time to reconsider our position. I think you do, Judge Martinez said dryly. Ms. Morrison, can you explain why your parents seem to be unaware of your career? I looked across the courtroom at my parents, both of whom were still in shock. Your Honor, my parents have been so focused on their own conflict that they haven't paid much attention to what's happening in their children's lives. They know I work with corporate clients, but they've never asked about the specifics of my practice or my financial situation. And yet they've argued that you're unqualified to care for your sister? Based on assumptions rather than facts, Your Honor. James handed another folder to the judge. Your Honor, we've prepared a comprehensive care plan for Emma, including educational provisions, healthcare coverage, and psychological support to help her process the trauma of this divorce. Ms. Morrison has already enrolled Emma in counseling and has worked with her school to ensure academic stability during this transition. Mom was crying now. Rachel, we didn't know. You never told us you were so successful. I tried to tell you. Every time I mentioned my work, you changed the subject or made assumptions about what I did. You were too busy fighting each other to listen. Dad stood up. Your Honor, if I may, I think we need to reconsider this entire situation. Sit down, Mr. Morrison, his attorney hissed. Let me handle this. But Dad ignored his lawyer. Your Honor, my daughter is clearly more qualified than either my ex-wife or myself to provide stability for Emma. If Rachel wants custody, maybe that's what's best for our daughter. Mom's attorney looked horrified. Your Honor, my client needs time to consider this development. Your client just spent 20 minutes arguing that Ms. Morrison was unqualified to raise a child, Judge Martinez pointed out. Now that you've learned she's a successful attorney with substantial financial resources, you want time to reconsider? The circumstances have changed, Your Honor. The circumstances were always the same. You simply didn't bother to investigate them before making assumptions. Judge Martinez turned to Emma, who had been sitting quietly throughout the proceedings. Emma, you're old enough to have input on this decision. Where would you like to live? Emma looked at both her parents, then at me. I want to live with Rachel, Your Honor. She's the only one who's been taking care of me throughout this whole mess. The judge nodded. I'm granting temporary custody to Ms. Morrison pending a full evaluation. Given her professional qualifications and financial stability, plus the child's clear preference, this seems to be in Emma's best interest. As we left the courthouse, my parents tried to approach me. Rachel, Mom said, I'm so sorry. We had no idea you'd accomplished so much. You had no idea because you never asked. You were too busy destroying each other to pay attention to your own children. Dad stepped forward. Can we start over? Can we try to be a real family again? I looked at both of them. My parents who'd spent months trying to prove the other was unfit while ignoring the daughter who was actually suffering. We can try, I said finally. But it starts with you two figuring out how to co-parent Emma without using her as a weapon. And it means actually listening when your children talk to you about their lives. Mom nodded tearfully. We will. I promise. We'll see, I said. Emma's well-being comes first now. Everything else is secondary. As we walked to our car, Emma slipped her hand into mine. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For being the only adult in this situation who actually cared about what was best for me. I squeezed her hand. That's what big sisters are for. That evening I got calls from both parents. Mom wanted to apologize for dismissing my career and asked if I could explain exactly what kind of law I practiced. Dad wanted to discuss how he could rebuild his relationship with both his daughters. For the first time in months, the conversations weren't about divorce proceedings or custody battles. They were about family, about understanding, about the work we'd all need to do to heal the damage that had been done. It was a